All right, my friends. Hello, hello, hello. It looks like we are live. Welcome, everyone. I'm super excited about our conversation today, and I think it's one that is particularly timely. We are going to be having a chat all about how to attract and retain great fundraisers for your organization. So, this is a conversation that has been largely inspired by a lot of talk about this idea of the Great Resignation. So, what's happening is I think folks are really reevaluating things. The pandemic has made us all revisit things like work life balance. What are our values and what do we want out of our careers? So, this as a result is causing a lot of us to think about and reevaluate what we want out of our work, what we want out of our careers. And as such, is resulting in a lot of folks making shifts in terms of the type of work, where they want to work, how they want to work, and so on and so forth. So this is what we're going to talk all about today is how do we as a nonprofit sector really start getting more strategic about attracting and retaining fundraisers? Because whether whether you believe in the coming Great Resignation or not, here is the reality: is the nonprofit sector has not been great at retention for a very long time now. This has been an issue that has been going on for a number of years, unfortunately, is we have a very high turnover in our sector. So something for us to be thinking about and working on looking forward, because this is an issue that is just going to exacerbate, I believe, as we end up moving back to the office and making a lot of these post-pandemic transitions. All right, so if you are just joining us, welcome, welcome. We are talking all about how to attract and retain great fundraisers. And let me introduce myself if we haven't met yet. My name is 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗲cie, and I help fundraisers and nonprofit leaders just like you raise more 5- and 6-figure donations for their mission. So welcome, come on in. I would love to hear from you. Let me know if you are watching right now. The thing I love about live broadcasts is this can be a two-way conversation. So I want to hear from you. Let me know who you are and where you are joining us from. And if you're catching up on the replay, welcome. I want you to go ahead and drop the hashtag replay below. I always come back and check in for comments and questions even after we've wrapped up this live. So go ahead and let me know who you are, where you're joining from. And if you're catching up on the replay, use that hashtag replay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started and dive right in. And I'm going to talk first about the importance. Hello, Maria Astrid from Montreal. Welcome. Hi, Anne. Anne is joining us from Arizona. Welcome, folks, and thank you for coming. Leah, hello from Up with Women. It's so nice to see you again, Leah. All right, my friends, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start off with talking about the importance of WIIFM. All right, there is a great, maybe not great, maybe it's a dad joke, but there's an old joke that circulates around a lot of, marketing teams and marketing experts. And it goes a bit something like this. What is everyone's favorite radio station? And the answer is WIIFM. And what that stands for, of course, is what's in it for me? What's in it for me as a candidate? So I think what I see is a lot of organizations, haven't necessarily got the memo yet that this truly is a candidate's market when it comes to experienced fundraisers, especially when it comes to experienced major gift fundraisers. So you really need, as an organization, to think when you're posting a job just about how are you selling yourself? How are you selling yourself to that qualified candidate? And just put some thought into that messaging. How are you positioned uniquely in terms of an organization and what you may bring to the table, right? What you may bring to the table for a great candidate. I see a lot of organizations still kind of treating job postings as a laundry list of demands of all the hours you're going to have to work, and how you're going to be, you need a car and you have to be available nights and evenings and weekends. And it's important to be clear on the expectations of the role, but I think what's often missing is the importance of understanding that we're really marketing ourselves as organizations, right? And when I say ourselves, I actually wanted to pause here and say I bring a quite unique perspective to this conversation, because I am coming to this conversation both as an employee, as a candidate who has worked as a frontline fundraiser for over 20 years. But for the past 5 years, I've actually found myself in the employer role. So this is really interesting. So I'm coming at this with the perspective both of someone with extensive fundraising experience who has been in that market and has been looking for roles. But now I'm also a hiring organization myself, an employer myself as a business owner. So it's an interesting dual perspective and unique perspective, I think, that I bring to this conversation. So I hope you find it helpful. So when I do say us and we, it's because I'm actually thinking about that as well, is that how can I become a business that's really great at attracting and retaining top talent, right? So that's my first tip for you, is understand the importance of WIIFM, what's in it for me as a candidate, and just getting really, really good at understanding what are the unique benefits working with your organization. How can you market yourself in that job description and really stand out from the competition? Because my friends, it is a competition right now, right? So it really is a perspective shift. I think it's important for all of us to make as hiring organizations. All right. So number 2 I wanted to talk about is this idea of the importance of trust and the importance of trusting your team. I think there's an issue we really saw come to the fore during the pandemic when we made that shift to remote work. A lot of workplace cultures had a great amount of discomfort with this. And I think a lot of that is rooted in this outmoded idea of, if I can't see and watch my staff team, how do I know they're doing their jobs, right? So this is, again, very outmoded way of thinking, and something we're probably going to have to drop as hiring organizations and as managers and leaders, because the future ultimately is very likely going to be a hybrid of in office, out of office. You're going to have remote workers. So this idea of actually needing to, have your eyes on your team at all times to make sure that they're performing and make sure they're doing the work, not necessarily serving us well, right? So, and I think it's also resulted in a pretty significant amount of time wasting, which neither of us want as hiring organizations or employees, right? What we've seen happening is it's resulted in perhaps like excessive Zoom meetings and excessive instant messenger, excessive use of Slack, all incredibly useful tools if used strategically and in moderation. So there's a cultural shift we're going to need to be thinking about, is how do we move away from that outdated idea of, if I can't be watching my team, I don't know they're working, to a point where we're thinking more about like building that trust in our team. I love the work of Cal Newport. I don't know if you've heard of him as an author. I just pulled out one of my favorite books by him called Deep Work. And I pulled this out for a reread because I think it's really relevant right now, because he talks a lot about how important it is to really find the time to do that focused, meaningful, deep work, because we are in such a distracted world right now. And Cal, I mention him because he has been doing so much interesting work on sort of how things have shifted during the pandemic and this move to remote work. And Cal had a great quote, I think it was in the New Yorker, and Cal talks about the fact that we need to change the very definition of work itself, right? We need to move away from surveillance and visible busyness and actually start moving towards defined outcomes and trust. So this is not just about, being totally hands off. This is largely about, how do we keep one another accountable, right? Like, even if we aren't present, even if we're working remotely, how do we keep one another accountable? And quite frankly, if you are someone who, or an organization that wants, the team to be in the office so you can keep an eye on them, if you're watching your major gift fundraiser working 5 days a week at their desk, you have a different problem, right? So I just want to plant that little seed there for you, because I think that's something that a lot of us, have to struggle with around shifting that culture and moving away from this idea that we have to all be present in one office in order to, to know the work is getting done. There are certainly benefits to working together, to being in person, that collaboration, the camaraderie, but I think we need to move away from that idea, as 𝗃𝗵𝗶𝘀𝗁 says, of surveillance, invisible busyness, and start actually thinking about this in terms of our results and our outcomes. All right, so love 𝗃𝗵𝗶𝘀𝗁. If you aren't familiar with him, go ahead and look him up. He's got a great podcast too. All right, my friends. So I wanted to also mention, go ahead, if you have any questions or insights as I'm chatting, please go ahead and drop them below, because I would love to hear from you. I know we've got a ton of expertise here today with us, and you may have some insights too around what is really working right now in terms of attracting and retaining great fundraisers. So I'd love to hear from you. I also want to hear if you have a question. So I'm going to go ahead and have a live Q&A at the end. So I'll be answering any questions you may have. We can talk about anything you might be struggling with, because I know it's a super challenging time right now. All right, so let's move on to this idea number 3 I wanted to share with you. And I'm calling this Know Your ABCs. I think I'm all about acronyms today, but they're great mnemonics to help remember. So know your ABCs. And this, I think, is really important when you're thinking about your roles. What are those factors within that role that are actually going to result in someone wanting to stick around at your organization? Hello, Jenna from South Korea. So wonderful to see you here. Okay, so know your ABCs. So I'm going to start with the A, number 1, and that is the importance of giving your employees agency, right? Your employees, no matter how junior or senior their role, they need to have some latitude to act independently and make their own free choices about how to get the results you're expecting from them, right? It's so, so important, that sense of agency, that sense of, being able to act independently within their role. Even in junior roles, I think that's a really important piece of development for folks in junior roles, but it becomes increasingly important the more senior role that you're hiring, is that ability and that space to act independently to get the results you're looking for as an organization. Now, I wanted to mention here that this is a balance. It's really important not to swing too far the other way. And what do I mean when I say that? It's important not to sort of throw people in the deep end and expect them to perform without any resources or tools or structure or processes, right? So it is a balance, right? It's a balance. You want people to have those processes and tools and structures that they need to be successful. And you want to give them some latitude to exercise some decision-making and some independence within that. Super important part of retention for our employees in our organization. So that's A. A is agency. B stands for boundaries. Now, this is absolutely of crucial importance. And I think making sure, A, that your organization actually has a culture that supports an employee putting boundaries in place is very important. It's important for us as employees to be able to put those boundaries in place. But sometimes what happens is the organizational culture can actually override that, right? Can override that. So, you need to really think about this as an organization. Have you created a culture where there's an expectation that employees are on 24/7, right? Do you expect an immediate response when you email, an immediate response when you Slack? This could all be a part of a culture that does not necessarily support the importance of having healthy boundaries, right? This is absolutely crucial. Hello, Suzanne, and welcome. So it's absolutely crucial that you, as a leader, are role modeling good boundaries. That means you're not emailing your employees at 2 a.m. You're role modeling good boundaries. You're ensuring that your organizational culture supports good boundaries, and you are supporting your team in also having good boundaries, because sometimes we bring experiences with us, right? So if you have spent a lot of time in an organization where it is expected that you reply to an email immediately and a Slack immediately, it can be a new way of learning how to work. But this goes back as well a little bit to this whole idea, and I feel like that there may be more coming on this idea of focused work and the importance of managing your time and carving out that crucial time that you need to really move the needle on what matters most in fundraising. And having good boundaries and supporting your team and having good boundaries is an absolutely crucial piece of that puzzle. All right, so that's the B. So we've got agency, we've got boundaries, and finally C is clarity. It's really crucial that all of your employees have clarity, right? So clarity to me means, many things, or shows up in many ways. So you want your employees to have clarity of role, right? They need to know what their function is. What are they doing every day when they're coming into the office at the very baseline. Clarity of role is really important. They also need to have clarity of goals, right? What does it look like to be successful in this role? What are my targets? What am I trying to hit? What results do you want me to get when you hire me? Being really clear about that. Even if that's created collaboratively, that's great too. But being very clear on what those results are that you want me to achieve in a role, absolutely important. And finally, clarity of vision. I think that's really important. When I say vision, of course, it's important that we have clarity of organizational vision, but I'm also thinking about clarity of fundraising vision, right? It's like, where are we going writ large, right? What do we want to achieve writ large with our fundraising, right? It's not just about tactics, it's also ever so crucially about that high level strategy and what vision you're trying to achieve with that strategy as well. So ensuring you're supporting your employees and having clarity, working collaboratively towards getting that clarity is absolutely crucial. Because here's what I have seen. Sometimes what can happen in organizations, especially if they have a bit of a tendency towards shiny object syndrome, if that target is constantly moving and you don't have clarity on, what you're trying to hit, or you're not actually sure, that you're going to hit that target, but it's going to have moved over here by the time the arrow actually reaches it, that's definitely an issue around retention, right? Is like not having that consistent clarity of what we're trying to do, where we're trying to get to. And this again is a little different, right? I know we do need to be nimble, and I know we do need to, adapt and be flexible, but it's a cultural piece for sure. It's an organizational cultural piece to watch out for. If that tends to be the, baseline mode of functioning, that the target is always moving, it's going to make it difficult for your team to get the clarity on what they're trying to get to, right? Because this is a long game, especially in major gifts. Major gifts is a long game. So it's important that the target isn't constantly moving and we know what we're trying to get to. So there we go. That is knowing your ABCs when it comes to retention, what's important for you to achieve or think about with all of your roles, whether they're junior, whether they're senior, having agency and independence to actually act and decision make around how to get to results, having strong boundaries, making sure that you're role modeling that to your team and ensuring that they have permission to have those boundaries that they need to have good work-life balance, and clarity of role, clarity of goals, clarity of that strategy and vision that you're trying to get to as an organization when it comes to your fundraising. All right, I'm going to pause and take a sip of my water here before I get to number 4. I have a lot of things to say about attracting and retaining good fundraisers. And I want to encourage you, if you have any questions or insights, go ahead and drop them below. I would love to hear from you. All right, so number 4, what I want to talk about is the crucial importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in your organization. So increasingly, candidates are looking very closely at this, right? They're looking closely at your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this has to go a lot deeper than a statement that's posted on your website. I think this is especially true for groups that have been historically excluded. So BIPOC fundraisers, LGBTQ plus fundraisers, fundraisers with disabilities are all going to be looking very closely at your organization when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they're looking for all sorts of things. We're looking for, who is represented on your team currently, right? How does that dedication to DEI actually live in your organization? Who is sitting at your leadership table, right? Who is sitting at your board table? They're looking for DEI to be embedded in your policies and in your practices as an organization. And this starts as early as the job posting, right? So do you have a commitment to pay equity? And are you clearly showing the salary in all of your job postings? So talking about being transparent about salary could be its own dedicated live session. So if you're interested in this movement to show the salary in your job postings and the impact it has on pay equity and how important it is when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I want to encourage you to visit showthesalary.com. There's a great movement afoot just to make sure that we're really aware as organizations about the impact that transparency of salary has on our sector and on our candidates. So those are a few things to think about. But if you are interested in ensuring you're attracting and retaining the best of the best when it comes to fundraisers, you do need to be thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in your organization. I love this. Leah has a great comment here, just saying we make sure that we post images of our staff and our board, as well as using preferred pronouns or our pronouns to ensure that we're clearly showing diversity on all levels. That's a great idea, showing pronouns and including pronouns in, and I should add this to my Zoom actually, adding pronouns in your communications, on your email footers is a great way. It's a small way to demonstrate the importance of inclusion. So many things to think about for sure. Thanks for that, Leah. And Caitlin, loving everything you're saying about boundaries and role clarity. Thank you, Caitlin. It is really important stuff, all of this, when we're thinking about attracting and retaining great fundraisers, because one thing I've noticed, and I'm sure I'm guilty of this as an employer myself, is that oftentimes what we like to do is, not necessarily take accountability or responsibility for our retention rates, right? Sometimes it's very easy, and I'm saying this from the perspective as someone who hires, it's very easy to say, oh, it's a tough market. There's so much turnover. Fundraisers leave, every 18 months. It's just the way it is. But in reality, we do have a great opportunity. We do have accountability and responsibility to look at our role as employers, our role as hiring organizations, and how we can have an impact on that retention, right? So important. All right. So I want to wrap up before I start taking any more questions to talk about continuing to invest in your team's development. All right. When you're budgeting for a new hire, do not overlook budgeting for ongoing professional development. And I think it's really important to do this with a very clear grasp on what the market rates are for coaching, for training, for attending conferences. I think that properly investing in your team's professional development, it sends a really strong message, right? It sends a strong message that I value you as an employee. I value your success. We're committed to your investing in you for your continued success in this role. Not only does investing in professional development send a clear message to your employees that's really important for retention, but the fact is continued professional development is absolutely crucial for your continued success as an organization, right? Fundraising is changing so quickly. I've been doing this for 25 years now, and I am constantly working on my professional development because things are shifting fast, right? You want to make sure that your team is staying on top of new developments. You want to make sure that your team is continually getting that best training to make sure that they are fully equipped to be raising the maximum amount of money that you need for your mission. So it's really is a, it's a double benefit there. Is not only is investing in professional development supporting your employee retention, but ultimately it's going to end up with you raising more money as an organization. The return on investment on professional development is huge. So make sure that you're budgeting for that. One mistake I see organizations making is they might have a set single professional development budget for employees across the board, right, in all departments and all seniority levels. But the reality is that, different types of professional developments can have different costs attached to those, different prices attached to those. So just make sure that you're really aware of what kind of investment is involved when you are thinking about that continued professional development with your team. It is no longer a nice to have, it's a need to have on so many levels, especially when it comes to retention. So those are the main points I wanted to cover. And with that, hello, Jason. We have a few folks joining us now. With that, if you're just joining us, welcome. And I'm going to go ahead and start taking some questions. And also, I'd love to hear your insights. If you have, if you have seen a lot of, good work within your organization or other organizations when it comes to any of the things we've talked about today, when it comes to attracting and retaining fundraisers, we want to know all your great ideas. So go ahead and weigh in there, and please go ahead and let me know if you have any questions. And in the meantime, I'm just going to, and I'm going to let you know where to find me, because I would love to stay in touch with you as I continue through and look at these questions. This is a conversation that I'm very interested in right now. I'm very interested in talking a lot about thinking about the way we're working as organizations, thinking about the way we're working as fundraisers. So do stay tuned and do stay in touch if that's something that's of interest to you, because I feel like it has a huge impact on our fundraising success and our fundraising outcomes, especially when it comes to major gifts. All right, so I'm just going to scroll up and see if I missed any. Hello, Cindy. All right, we have folks joining us from all over. I love this. Okay. All right, Suzanne, we're trying to think of professional development as more than courses. We're doing things like mentoring, stretch projects. I love this. So, I think this is a really good point, is that internal mentoring within the organization is really smart. Giving stretch projects to employees as they're developing is great with the right support. Also, many great free online courses are available, and I would agree with that. There is actually a ton of professional development available at a low or free cost. There's also scholarships available, especially if you're a smaller organization. And I won't let this opportunity pass to mention that actually my free training, which is all about how to raise more major gifts without face-to-face meetings, is just wrapping up this week. So we're putting it back in the vault next week. So it's your last chance to take that. It's a free masterclass. It's online, and you can find out more about that at 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲.com. So there you go. I'll give a plug for my own free training that's available on my website. So lots of great opportunities out there at a variety of different price points. So do go ahead, make sure you're taking advantage of that. I love that. It's a great idea, Suzanne. All right, Jen has a question. Okay, your question, Jenna, is more about fundraising versus, I'm focused really today on retaining and recruiting fundraisers versus fundraising tactics. But do stay in touch, because I do, and check out my website, because I do share a lot of free resources there that are more focused on fundraising tactics. But today we're really talking about retention and recruitment of fundraising staff. So, all right, we have a few more comments coming in here. All right, any advices on additional places to post? Networking is key for sure. Just trying to find all the avenues for finding new talent. That is a great idea. Definitely there are some of the, there are some of the more traditional avenues, including the Association for Fundraising Professionals and Charity Village here in Canada. But I'd love to hear from you if you have found some great avenues where you are posting your jobs. Let us know, and drop that idea below, because certainly it's really important to be able to increase that reach, right? It's important to be able to get that word out. And I think, networking is important when it comes to, one place that can trip us up sometimes, especially when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. If we're already quite a homogenous organization, it does not sound like this is necessarily your issue, Leah, but I will just put a sort of point of caution in there for others who are watching. If our organization is already quite homogenous, sometimes what finding folks through networks does is it ends up replicating that homogeneity. I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but so do watch out for that. If you are thinking about using your networks, do think about what the diversity of those networks looks like, because you may be unintentionally, narrowing your focus too far, right? If you don't have adequately diverse networks, if that makes sense. Anne McKinnon is from a botanical garden. Oh, I love botanical gardens. I'm a big gardener myself. You advertise on industry and association sites. That's a great idea. I love that. So it's like finding that alignment. For example, if you do have an area of specialization and want to attract folks who may actually be career transitioners. Career transitioners can be a great, a great source of new candidates as well. Love that idea, Anne, around finding those career transitioners who may actually not be on the Association of Fundraising Professionals site. So groundwork jobs is a suggestion from Suzanne, which has an environmental focus, and also thinking about colleges. I love this. If you've got colleges in your community, especially colleges that are doing some fundraising training, like Humber College here in Toronto, that's a great place to look. I know Humber College actually has some groups where you can post your posting, and what I love about Humber College is they're always looking out and making sure that you are committed to pay equity and you're showing the salary in your posting. So definitely going and working with colleges, communicating with students. What a great way to find some amazing talent for your organization, right? Yes, and there's some agreement here around making sure that we're not overly dependent on networking, because that can end up, when we have homogenous networks, which we typically do tend to, kind of replicating that issue. So just be really cognizant of that there as well. I love this. So many good ideas here. So thinking about reaching out to colleges, thinking about what your cause may align, whether that's environmental causes, whether, for example, that's arts, may have another, may have some dedicated places to look as well. So thinking about your particular niche and where you may find folks or career transitioners as well is a great idea, or folks that are new to the sector too. So I love this, all these great ideas. And this is one of the things I love about the live broadcast, is this can be a conversation where you can weigh in and share your insights as well. I love this. So if you have any other questions, go ahead and drop those below. I hope this has been useful conversation for you if you're in the hiring process now, or perhaps you're aspiring to a leadership role in which you're going to have a significant hiring role. These are a few things to think about. And again, these are not necessarily easy or quick fixes. I want to recognize that as well. Oftentimes, the things that you need to truly be able to attract and retain great fundraisers are fundamentally cultural shifts, right? They're cultural shifts that can take a while to achieve. So, just think about that and think about the role you may have in influencing those cultural shifts within your organization as well. So I have loved our chat together today. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you stay in touch. I see many familiar faces here today, but if we're not already in touch, please do go visit my website, blueskyphilanthropy.com, or follow me here so that we can stay in touch, because I would love to hear how things unfold for you. I would love to keep up to date, as things unfold, and, whether the Great Resignation is coming or some folks are saying already here. I want to hear how you're doing and how you're managing when it comes to hiring and attracting and retaining great fundraising leaders. And Suzanne, yes, this is going to be recorded. There'll be a replay available. You're watching on LinkedIn, so there will be a replay available on LinkedIn if you missed any portion of it and want to go back and rewatch. So do look out for that. Hello, Isabel, and welcome, and thank you for coming. All right, my friends, with that, I am going to go ahead and wrap up and wish you best of luck. Hope you stay in touch. All right, we'll talk soon.